Welcome to Spaghetti Launchers, the world-building podcast where we throw spaghetti at the wall, and it is up to you what sticks. I'm Kyle.
I'm Ethan. Today's menu appropriately is all about harvest deities. Happy Thanksgiving, y'all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
In the United States, of course. What's your favorite Thanksgiving food, Kyle?
Stuffing.
Ah, good man.
1,000%. Yeah. And if someone makes bad stuffing, it really ruins my day.
It really does. I want no oysters in my stuffing whatsoever.
What's your favorite Thanksgiving food?
Oh, it's stuffing. Very specifically, my grandmother's recipe. The one that would kill you because it has 8 different types of onions and like 2 heads of garlic in it.
Dang.
But I made it once for you without onions and garlic, and it was still very tasty, was it not?
I don't recall.
Controversial take, though. Pumpkin pie is a bad dessert.
That is a controversial take. I don't agree.
That's fine. You can be wrong.
I think apple pie is a bad dessert.
I've come around on apple pie.
I think all fruit pies are kind of disappointing.
That is a bold take, sir.
Oh, and I stand by it. It is one of the hot takes. I will die on that hill. I really dislike almost every single fruit pie.
Fascinating.
I frequently when I make this point, I want to say I really like a cream pie, and then I end up having said that. But like banana cream or chocolate cream, like a
Lemon
pumpkin,
chiffon.
like anything that is like a gooier texture that isn't like, I don't like chunks of.
So if I
don't like baked fruit. Baked fruit isn't a no.
What if I made like a custard, like a lemon tart or like a cranberry
That's
tart?
Good. I had a lemon meringue tart yesterday. It's delicious.
Fantastic. This is excellent to know. Good. I learn something new about you every time we record, Kyle.
That's how friendship works.
Our cornucopia of friendship overfloweth, you might say.
Yeah, and, we've had our banter like a normal podcast now, and now we move into proceedings, which is bantering about the topic.
There aren't that many harvest specific deities in real world mythology that I was able to learn about from a very cursory.
It's like you would have an agriculture person.
Yeah.
You have like a sun deity who plays the role, and I think it's mostly just saying, hey, it's time to harvest.
Yeah.
Maybe make an offering to X god because you want to make sure that you have a good harvest and you get a good yield.
Yep.
In D&D, Pelor, I think, the god of the harvest, which is, in fantasy, kind of a dominant thing. I think it's in any pantheon, you can create a god that is for the harvest.
Absolutely. In real world mythology, it's often not just the harvest explicitly. It is the harvest is tied into the deity of agriculture.
Yes.
And so whatever else they are associated with are aspects of their domain. I'm starting to hate that word. But, agriculture deities are often motherly figures, thinking Persephone, Demeter, that are also associated with fertility and birth and reproduction and motherhood. Yeah. That's a very common thing. But on the flip side, there are also a lot of harvest deities that are very much associated with the concept of death. And the Grim Reaper itself draws very heavily on harvesting imagery, carrying around a big scythe. That is a tool of the harvest, of the cull. And it is very emblematic.
Let's go with that.
Emblematic.
Symbolic would be the other word.
Symbolic, thank you. That's one. Of the relationship between harvest, death, especially when after the harvest, you store a lot often to prepare for the time when all the plants that you just were growing start dying.
Yeah. And one could ask, well, why don't you just do agricultural deities? Well, that wouldn't be in keeping with Thanksgiving, and this needs to be on theme. So harvest is much more of a Thanksgiving theme, and thus we're playing around with that.
Yeah.
These will be quite agriculturally related, but,
It's very similar, though.
Yeah, get your pedantry out of here. We see it, and we don't want it.
I don't play by anyone's rules, except my own rules.
I mean, even on this podcast, we play by very loose rules.
More like guidelines.
Where'd this accent come from?
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh. I haven't watched it in a long time. I should watch it again.
It's a great movie.
I mean, Just Right did a great video.
They did. That's what I was thinking about. That's what I was thinking about. That's why I said it.
Yeah.
We were spoiled by it.
Anyway.
What's on your Thanksgiving menu today, Kyle?
Feed me.
Dig it.
That seems appropriate.
It does.
What's on yours?
Let's put on our thinking caps.
Okay.
I want to hear about Feed Me first, because all I'm thinking of is Jenna Maroney on 30 Rock. That's Me Want Food.
Yeah. Me want food.
Me Want Food.
So you could do that too. This is a darker idea. It is not a particular, because harvest deities, like the agriculture deities often, relatively neutral to positive, I think. The Grim Reaper Association is a thing, but I'm leaning more into that side of things, which is a deity, a harvest deity that is basically demanding much of the harvest be provided to them. That you are providing, like you are growing this food for you, but also for me.
Yeah.
Because I, as a deity, actually do need the food to survive. I have to eat this food.
Oh, interesting.
I will envelop it in some way, and I don't know that mechanic is irrelevant.
Yeah.
But like I need you to sacrifice it to me by actually like donating it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And if not, I'm a deity who's angry, and I will start messing you up.
Yeah.
And so
messing up your actual harvest.
No, killing you.
Oh, killing you right then. Oh, sure, because it would be the harvest, you have to give it to me, which means you are honoring the god after the harvest is already completed.
Yeah.
Because that's interesting. You could you honor the god basically after the harvest or before.
You're paying a tax.
Yeah.
And that tax is to say, so the god is trying to help you grow a good harvest. They don't want you to fail, but if you fail by your own error, that's when they come for you. So they'll give good conditions, and it's basically just every year. It's an intense test where like all of the people need to be all hands on deck, like total focus. We need good yields. We need a lot of food because we need to survive, and because if we don't provide enough, he's going to kill us.
So it sounds like this harvest deity is a really bad manager.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're just cracking
like with
the
divine
whip.
Powers.
Right, but they think that they're being a leader. They're like, I'm increasing yield and producing growth, but it's all coming to me.
They don't think that at all.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
They're just like, I need you.
Oh, so there's no illusions that what I'm doing is a good thing. It's just pure selfishness.
It's neutral.
Okay.
From the god's point of view. It is this is the way the world works. I provide you with rain. I provide you with fertile soil, and you make everything else happen.
I'm owed what I'm due.
Yes, because I gave you these conditions, because they control these things. They control the weather, and they say, I've given you good weather, I've given you good conditions, make it happen. And if you don't, that's 100% on you, because I gave you everything else.
I like that the agriculture harvest deity controls the weather. I always am a fan of that.
It's not the Jews this time.
For once. We're taking a break. It was the Sabbath. We haven't turned the lasers back on yet.
That's why it's so cold.
I am going to take my future microwave idea and bring it into the now, because I have another one I can use for that later.
Oh, wow.
But
this is unprecedented territory. Speaking of no rules, here we go.
The idea that I had was that the harvest deity was also... or the god of the harvest was also the god of greed. And so over time, as the society that worshiped this deity developed, this deity would become like the patron saint or the patron deity of tax collectors.
Well,
and
this is
tax
and
the tax
similar,
collection would come at the same time as the harvest. It began with a tithe. It began with you are due a 10%, this deity demanding 10, 50, 75% of your harvest, of your yield, be brought to them. Then over time, as the church developed, it became the people that would go out and collect the actual yield, the actual harvest. But then as other mediums of exchange became available, it just became taxes. And so harvest season also becomes tax season. And so the IRS is effectively a holy order at this point.
Okay. That's cool. I like that. That is a good. You could just slide that perfectly into this idea.
Yeah.
Which is like, because that's kind of all I have in the idea is basically just this. It is a harvest deity that is greedy, wants all the product. People are terrified to make sure, and so like there'll be social impacts of this. Sure. We have to provide the food. We cannot war during any agriculturally important season. Like if it's planting season or harvest season, nobody go to war.
Yeah.
We don't want any, and if there is a war, you have to do it in open plains where no one grows any food. Do not mess with anyone's farm, because you will be like, this is God. It's
mutually assured destruction.
Yeah. And this God is following what's happening. They have they have the powers of a God. They probably know who could be responsible for this. So they could say, you burned this farmer's fields. I'm actually not gonna blame that farmer. I'm gonna blame you.
See, that's interesting, because my instinct would be that it would go the other way, that you would start attacking it as a proxy war. You would start attacking other people's crops so that they would get punished by the deity. I'm just going to call, just for the sake of conversation, thresh, because you thresh wheat. Thresh. Fine.
I think
I just need a pronoun.
I think that's not bad. Oh, woke as hell. Let's bring in the pronouns. What was that?
I don't know. Move on. Continue. And to acknowledge your joke somehow.
Was it whip?
It was trying to be.
Or was it drum beat? Or
no,
drum
it was
a whip.
It was a whip.
But why would you do that?
I don't know.
A joke. All right. Anyway, moving on.
It was like, you got me. You whipped me. I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think that's a cool idea, but I think the logical part of my brain says that they wouldn't do that because Thresh would obviously notice that, well, now I'm not getting what I want because people are doing that. So they would probably want to do that the way to make sure, like, whoever's the cause of me not getting this food, that's who I punish because I need to make sure that they actually grow it. Because
they don't care who grows it as long as they get it.
Or maybe both people get punished because then, like, or like to a lesser degree, like you didn't protect your crop enough.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And you harmed a crop,
right?
So you are responsible
for protecting your crop,
but you are responsible for your actions, and you fucked up this crop,
right?
So it would be like farmers are like in an arms race. They're building up huge defenses, and they've got like guard towers with
Sure.
with just people up there with snipers, type situation, just making sure that they're watching these walls, being like, don't you dare climb over here and try to mess with this maze. This is important. And yeah, that's kind of it.
What does Thresh look like?
I don't know.
Because
it's a god.
Well, I know, but in my head, it was a chipmunk with infinitely expanding cheeks.
That is insane.
Yeah.
You're an insane person.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
No.
All right.
Most deities are crazy, though.
Yeah. Because in my mind, it was much more of like a,
Ganesha is an elephant's head on a baby's body. Why is a chipmunk with infinitely expanding cheeks?
Because one of those is historically significant, and one of them is made up right now. And I'm not going to insult the one that's historically significant, but I'll insult yours. I think it's more of like, it feels silly.
That was such a good rant.
I feel like it's too silly. I mean, and not that like,
sure,
not like you can be silly, but I mean more like, I feel like they would want this Thresh should be a bit more intimidating.
The other one I thought of was honest to God, just a big fat bear.
Well, that's funny.
Just because I'm thinking about cycles of like gorging and hibernation. There was an article this morning about how all the squirrels around the city are looking super cute and chubby because they're all like putting on weight for the winter.
Mm-hmm. I saw a wild fox yesterday.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Foxes are. I love foxes.
I was birding and I couldn't find any good birds, but I found a good one.
So you went foxing.
I went foxing. And it's mostly because I sat still on a rock for like 20 minutes and then a fox, and so there was no activity. And then a fox came running out of the valley. It was awesome. Foxes are great.
They're so great.
Anyway.
So any creature that does that would be a potential candidate. And so I thought a big bear would also work.
Yeah, that could work. I like the idea, and this is also just the way my brain works about any deity. Is I always imagine them as like this faceless, like the sun is their face, that like a hooded figure. In this case, sun with like there is a storm cloud behind them because they control the weather, like almost like an encapsulation of Earth. So very much like a Gaia looking god. But you can do whatever.
But that's
or you can do nothing.
Plus, with the bear, you could also call it Ursa, like Ursa Latin for bear, but IRS.
Let's move on to your idea. You really enjoyed that one.
I really did. All right. I enjoy breaking you.
I think we have gotten to the end of that idea for sure. I think we got the idea a while ago. So
we did, but it was good.
What was your tease again? Remind me.
Let's put on our thinking caps.
Okay.
The idea here is that throughout the history of human development, society has developed around agriculture. You know this. You know that as agriculture develops, so too does society. Agriculture has also been one of the leading reasons for the development of technology.
Yep.
Not just domestic technology, but even offensive technology, right? Like the majority of weapons were originally farming implements at their start, and they've then developed and evolved on their own. And so I thought about having the agricultural deity also being the deity of war,
Yeah.
Because farming implements, like, oh yes, I'm gonna hit you with this shovel now. The Grim Reaper carrying the scythe. But I think what I like more is the idea of the harvest deity being also the deity of invention, because the goal is to figure out more ways to increase the harvest to better honor and acknowledge and support the deity of agriculture, the god of the harvest. And so the tenets of their belief, when you celebrate the harvest, you are celebrating the innovations, the things that you have changed over the past year to try and inspire plants to grow faster. You don't inspire plants to grow, to try and cause plants to grow faster.
You can inspire them. Or you just shout at them and see what happens.
And maybe that is, and I'm not trying to be funny, maybe that is one of the practices where you do go out and there are songs that you sing to the plants to encourage them to grow. And so sort of the rituals are never the same every year. The ritual is the act of creation. It is never, so every year the harvest looks different because you are trying new technology and new inventions and new practices to not only increase crop growth, but also increase the yield. And so it is the god of the harvest that is the catalyst for all technological advancement in this society.
Okay.
You seem confused.
I just don't know what else to say. Honestly, I'm like, yeah, done.
Yeah.
I mean, almost like, yeah, it makes sense. I think the idea that you tie ag and war together is really interesting. I think there is a lot, because like, even if I don't know what to do with the technology thing, I think
the innovation idea, the god of innovation, the god of invention being the god of the harvest, we can put that aside if you want to focus on the god of war.
Yeah, let's focus on that, because I think that is something, because I think the innovation and the harvest, that makes sense. And that's a natural pairing. You don't really need to do much more to that.
It's just one we haven't seen really. Yeah. And so that's why I wanted to explore it.
And to just acknowledge that it exists, because they are bedfellows. That is, it's life, it's new things, it's, and it's also, it's productivity, it's whatever.
It also breaks it because so many traditional harvest or agriculture deities are focused on the cycle of, life, death, rebirth, right? That growth, or the cycle of the seasons. This breaks it. This is specifically not about the cycle. This is because you are constantly changing the practices that you use each year.
It is more about modern agriculture.
Yes.
With all the innovations and technologies that are constantly being developed, whether natural or not. There are both.
Absolutely.
And that, so part of me is also like, that just feels like work.
So I want to get off of it so quickly.
But then the war one feels like, that is new. And that's interesting, because you are combining, and it combines other ideas we've talked about a couple of times before. Like it combines kind of what we talked about on my idea here, with the, like, do you defend crops? Do you attack crops?
Yeah.
And then also combines what I talked about in an earlier episode with, I think, magical substances, where my idea was a conquering army that was running off of like a magical food.
Oh, right.
And it feels very similar, because it was like they're being propelled by having food. And is this combining the war and the harvest? Is it because to sustain war they need to be harvesting?
I think yes, and also it would fit in. This is a very neat tie-in to the Grim Reaper, where you are not just harvesting, where suddenly you're not just harvesting crops, or crops do not just mean plants, where you are suddenly starting to harvest potentially souls.
Oh, jeez.
You are going out there, right? And if so, you are combining these two, where every implement is a tool for growth. Like if you're changing the definition of the word, right? Yeah. A harvest tool is also a weapon, because you are harvesting not just plants and crops, you are harvesting souls to feed your deity as well.
Zoom out on the definition of harvest. You're harvesting everything,
right?
You're harvesting the land you're harvesting crops, but you're also harvesting ore.
Territory.
Well, yeah, like you're removing, like you're taking lumber, you're taking ore, you're taking villages and their taxes, you're taking lives by, through war. You are harvesting, as like it becomes a synonym for conquest
and greed.
and greed.
Yeah.
And I like the idea that it is like a perversion of what the harvest deity was.
Yeah.
The harvest deity,
originally.
yeah, where it was about harvesting crops, and they've somehow been able to warp it into being like, no, we harvest everything. We take and we take and we take, and then it's like been like the impetus for a conquering horde who is running around taking everything, because that's what their religion now says. But maybe
because it's been so twisted and perverted.
And maybe that deity is just like, doesn't actually have a hands-on approach. They don't actually know what the deity wants. Or maybe the deity itself has said, actually, this is pretty nice. And they get corrupted by the greed. I don't know.
Or it doesn't even, this is a story that could work even if the deity isn't explicitly real. Where this is how a natural society, or a society could develop. You take this concept of, our horn overfloweth, right? The cornucopia, the horn of plenty, it is overflowing. We come and we share, and we all share together and celebrate the excess in a bountiful crop. That is very easy to start turning into, you have to give to us so that we can share with you. And then it starts sort of a vicious cycle there.
They can be manipulative and saying like, give to us so we can share with you. And
we just decide how much to share.
Yeah. And then you bring in the spirit of Thanksgiving, you're bringing in the colonialism.
Right.
Yay.
But it's
America.
But it's this, I'm very into these things. I like playing with language and the idea behind language. And it's like, the harvest. Yeah, you are harvesting, but it don't just mean crops. This is not just like sweater weather deity. This is potentially, even when I was thinking about the god of the harvest also being the god of innovation and invention, harvest and agriculture deities are so often, they're symbolized by trees or wheat, and they're in very simple farmers' clothes.
It's always fucking wheat.
Yeah, bread is the reason we have cities.
Yeah, I know.
So,
but it's also like, come on, guys.
Yeah.
What about rice?
But also, sure. But
wheat's only important in the Western world, bitch. Get your colonialism. The whip's back.
But in this way, I was thinking, what if your point about this being basically a modern deity of agriculture, right? The god of agriculture would be a god of metal and machinery and very Saruman engines of growth, right?
Yeah, and then
very atypical, very against trope.
I kind of like this now that we're leaning into that. Like, but if you just instituted modern ag in a fantasy setting, where it's like there's only like a couple farmers, we gave like the god of the harvest provided them with these great monstrosities that harvest it for them. And so they don't really need any help. We have huge swaths of land just labored on by a few people, and the cities are flourishing and we're growing like crazy. And then you almost get into this darker storytelling as well of like overcrowding in the city because the innovation on the farms has not been met, like isn't translate. Like they don't know what to do with themselves in the cities. Maybe you could either go with like overpopulation and problems, like the slummy side, or you can go with, well, actually people are well fed, they're taken care of, and instead we're having a more leisurely, debaucherous
universal basic income and or negative income tax credits.
Yeah,
the ways of the world.
They're not the ways of the world.
Damn it.
They could be in this world that we're talking about here, but they're not the ways of our world.
I know. But yeah, that was my take was the god of invention. And I like where we took it also with the god of agriculture, the god of the harvest being the god of war.
Yeah.
I think those are just two very different takes
I think
on.
Basically the idea here is taking the god of the harvest and making them in charge of other things as well.
Yeah.
Marrying very clearly different domains, though I hate the word.
Well, just in the same way that, again, Demeter, Persephone are associated with childbirth and fertility.
Yeah.
It's no different. It's just these are things that agriculture and harvest deities typically are not associated with.
Yeah, and especially because it's like we're taking a more modern sensibility to understanding that like this is what these things are now versus like once upon a time where it's like, well, fertility and like ag was a process. It still is in much of the world, and in some cases like it's a process of I hope that this crop takes well.
Yeah.
versus like, actually, we're just going to dump a shit ton of chemicals and fertilizer, and we're going to make sure that this works. And it's actually just a matter of scale, you know, and you're adding in that version, which is interesting. And a thing that there's a lot of great commentary in there about the modern food complex,
absolutely,
food industry, in food systems.
This ain't no trad god. Broke you twice in one episode.
I don't think that didn't break me. It's just making me feel sad about the tradwise movement, which I don't understand, but also I find very funny. Anyway, okay, well, let's move on to some frozen lasagna.
Lasagna episode.
All right. Well,
I'll go first this time.
You go first. Okay, Bing.
Can you sit? So this is a world in a world. This is a world where instead of harvesting crops grow aplenty. And so you never really have to worry. The weather is, you know, let's just say the crops that you're growing grow all season, all year round. So you never really have to do this cyclical thing. However, since we in our real world have just entered into daylight savings time, what if the world actually went dark for a significant period of time? And so instead of harvesting crops, you actually had to harvest light. And so throughout the course of the year, you were setting and contributing and gathering all different sources of light together and gathering them all into one place to create a giant bonfire that was to last you throughout the rest of the dark period in order to maintain light throughout daylight savings time. So instead of daylight savings, it was just light savings.
Okay. We can't talk about it. Lasagna. All right.
The god itself might be a black hole also. I hadn't decided.
Okay.
Yeah. Ding.
A Willy Wonka-esque god of the harvest, where there's a harvest festival to kick off the harvest season, and everyone is invited into this demi-plane where the god resides, and it is like a sprawling, beautiful fields, like Elysium level, like gorgeous, and they just have a huge feast for everybody, and they do like demonstrations on like, here's how to harvest this, and here's this, and they give tips and advice, and they feed everybody really well, and then they say, now go home at the end of the night, and it's very pleasant, very uplifting. That's it.
Oh, no kids die?
No.
Huh.
It's Willy Wonka if Willy Wonka wasn't a psychopath.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
that's good. Awesome.
All right. What stuck for you?
The tractor god of the harvest. Yeah, the god of innovation. I think it's
John Deere's his name.
But also, you and I did really a very similar thing, which is we took this concept, which is typically very friendly and warm and cozy and right,
and said fuck that. Thanksgiving is not a happy holiday.
But okay,
it is.
But it is a celebration of excess.
Yeah,
which is like the average Thanksgiving meal can have upwards of 4,000 calories.
Yeah,
and so yes, it is a good thing because we have come to associating it with gathering and friends and plenty and full bellies and full belly and gratefulness and yada yada. It's a fine line between like
also
excess and greed.
Native Americans, smallpox, and breaking our treaties.
And right, so for me, it was the changing of the concept and the trope. That's what stuck for me.
All right,
what stuck for you?
The light harvest.
Yeah,
I really want to talk about it, but we couldn't talk about it because it was your thing, and I think it's specifically because like all you said right there. That's probably right. Yeah,
Sure,
I like that we kind of inverted it and did the thing which we normally do, which is invert the trope and make it either positive or negative depending on whatever. Anyway, so I really like the light harvest because I think that's a story right there, and I think that's always the thing that I think about when we do this world building is that sometimes we come up with world building details that are just cool and you can plug and play.
Yeah, because the details are fun.
The details are fun, and oftentimes those things that can exist in a vacuum. Sometimes we have ideas though where I'm like, that's a good, like I imagine the story based on this world building detail.
Yeah.
And that is a world building detail that is like not just a detail, that's a world building, that's a world.
Yeah. The whole thing.
Because it would really revolve around this. And I think that's really exciting. And I think the idea of having to harvest light to survive, because you get into like a apocalyptic level world at that point.
Yeah.
Everything is centered on one single survival element.
Yeah. One single resource.
Yeah. Which like my idea kind of did that as well, where it's like, but in a way that's a little bit less like unique and engaging than like, oh, we have to make sure that we have enough light because say it gets too cold or whatever. Because you can play around with like Arctic vibes. You know, like if you really want to tell us like a fantasy story in northern Norway, but you don't want to make it Viking based. Well, here's your example of what you do. Like you can have those Norse vibes and also tell a different story.
I started thinking about it. We were rewatching the Harry Potter movies and seeing Ron in the 7th movie play around with the Deluminator, watching all the light get sucked in and then put back out. That's what catalyzed this. That and daylight savings time, because I realized it was dark at 4 p.m. yesterday.
Ooh, yeah.
But those two things, I was like, what if you were harvesting light? What if light was somehow a finite resource?
Yeah.
And you could magically pull it in and then put it back out when you needed it to.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's what stuck for us. Let us know what stuck for you. Emails in the show notes.
Thanks for listening. Happy Thanksgiving and goodbye.